frontin' on nothing. 2 in the morning, I just rolled over. You're making it hard for me. You were so beautiful, beautiful. I love you, babe. 'Cause without you, there's no me. Don't you know that you're a queen? Spoken of, only love, only one. You're my wifey. Whenever you need it, yeah. Whenever you need it. The type of girl that have me do anything. You're my wifey. You got that love, baby.
Most people think of Next as just another 90s R&B group. Smooth harmonies, chart-topping hits, and a classic slow jam or two. But what if I told you they were never really a group at all? Behind the scenes, Next was a ticking time bomb. There were deep personal betrayals, financial accusations, and fights that nearly turned physical. One member was accused of stealing, another was dragged to court, and one even went bankrupt. They weren't a brotherhood. They were a business arrangement that fell apart. And the real reason for their downfall? It had nothing to do with music. Let's get into all the drama. But before we do, make sure you hit that like and subscribe for more daily videos like this. Let's go. For years, fans believed Next was just another tight-knit R&B group. 3 guys who came together, made hits, and fell off like so many other 90s acts. But the truth? They were never really a solid unit. From the start, there was an undeniable divide. The Brown brothers, T-Lo and Tweet, had a bond that went beyond music. They grew up together, survived a rough childhood, and always had each other's backs. RL? He was the outsider. Sure, the label sold them as a trio, but if you looked a little closer, the cracks were obvious. RL was always the front man, the one singing lead, writing the songs, and getting the most attention. And that created a problem, because no matter how many hits they had, no matter how many awards they won, RL was always Next's biggest asset, and its biggest problem. And the reason why, that goes all the way back to their beginnings. To understand why Next was never built to last, you have to look at where they came from. T-Lo and Tweet, the Brown brothers, grew up in survival mode. Raised by a single mother in Gary, Indiana, they went through physical abuse, neglect, and eventually got kicked out of their own home. T-Lo, the older brother, hustled on the streets just to make sure Tweet had food and stayed in school. Their childhood was rough. Music was their escape. RL, on the other hand, had a completely different upbringing. He grew up in Minneapolis, in a 2-parent home. But don't get it twisted, his life wasn't perfect. His father constantly put him down, told him he'd never amount to anything, and punished him for chasing his dreams. It got so bad that RL almost ended his life. One day he grabbed his mother's gun, ready to end it all, but something stopped him. Instead, he was taken away in handcuffs, placed in a straitjacket, and locked in a padded room for hours. So from the start, these guys were different. T-Lo and Tweet had a ride-or-die bond, and RL, he was on his own. And when they finally came together, that difference never went away. In fact, it only got worse. When RL and the Brown brothers finally crossed paths, it seemed like fate. They met in the early 90s through a mutual friend, and their voices clicked instantly. They started out as a 4-member group called Straightforward, but even back then, one member got cut because he didn't blend well vocally. That should have been the first red flag. This group wasn't built on friendship. It was built on business. And when DJ KG from Naughty by Nature got involved, things really started to take shape. He saw potential in their sound and helped them land a deal with Clive Davis at Arista Records. But here's where things started to go left. The industry saw RL as the star. He wasn't just the lead singer, he was the songwriter, the creative force, and the one labels wanted to push. He wrote most of their biggest hits, including Too Close, Wifey, and Buddha Love. And that created tension. T-Lo and Tweet were supposed to be his equals, but RL was getting all the attention. The Brown brothers were in a group with him, but they weren't in control of it. And as their success grew, so did the resentment. Because when Too Close exploded and went #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, that success came with money, fame, and serious problems. For most groups, hitting #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 is the dream. But for Next, it was the beginning of the end. Their 1990 1997 debut album Rated Next went double platinum, and Too Close became one of the biggest R&B songs of all time. They won 8 Billboard Music Awards in one night, a record that still stands today. But behind the scenes, money and ego were pulling them apart. RL was becoming an industry go-to. Labels, artists, and producers saw him as more than just a singer. He was a hit maker, and he started writing for other artists. We Can't Be Friends for Deborah Cox, which went gold. The Best Man I Can Be with Tyrese, Genuine, and Case. Songs for Luther Vandross, J-Heim, and others. And while RL was out securing the bag, the Brown brothers felt left behind. Tilo and Tweet saw it as betrayal. To them, Next was supposed to be a group, a brotherhood. But RL? Question mark. He was moving like a solo artist. Money started disappearing. Accusations started flying. Tweet and Tilo were convinced RL and their management were cutting side deals and not splitting things fairly. Then Tweet dropped a bombshell. He publicly accused RL and even his own brother Tilo of stealing from him. At this point, Next wasn't a group anymore. It was a war zone, and the more money they made, the worse it got. And then RL made a move that completely shattered any chance of reconciliation. By the early 2000s, Next was barely holding on. The tension between RL and the Brown brothers was at an all-time high, but they kept the group going for now. Then RL dropped a bomb on them. In 2002, instead of focusing on the group, he went solo. He released his debut album, RL: Elements, hoping to capitalize on his industry buzz. But it flopped. No hit singles, no major sales, nothing. Tilo and Tweet were furious, not because RL went solo, but because he left Next hanging. They felt the group was still on the rise, and his focus should have stayed on them. Instead, RL was treating Next like a backup plan. But while the group was falling apart, Tweet's personal life was going up in flames. His wife took him to court over domestic violence charges, not once, but twice. The allegations painted an ugly picture, and no matter how much he denied it, his reputation took a serious hit. Then came the money problems. By the mid-2000s, RL was in financial trouble. Rumors started swirling that he was broke and had even filed for bankruptcy. His publicist later confirmed the bankruptcy filing but blamed it on an accountant stealing from him. At this point, the group was dead. In 2003, Tweet officially left, blaming RL and Tilo for ripping him off financially. RL, meanwhile, was making moves outside the group, forming a short-lived trio with Q from 112 and Wingo from Jagged Edge, which also went nowhere. By now, Next was a joke. The group had fallen so far that when their song Too Close randomly went viral in 2015 thanks to the meme Why You Always Lying, RL wasn't even happy about it. He later admitted that while he played along deep down, he was angry that his life's work had turned into an internet joke. So with all this drama, how did they even end up reuniting? Well, they did, sorta, but not in the way fans hope. After years of public feuding, financial issues, and personal scandals, Next tried to make a comeback in 2018. But let's be real, this wasn't a real reunion. Yes, all 3 original members, RL, Tilo, and Tweet, got back together, but this wasn't about brotherhood. This was about business. They dropped their first new single in 16 years, Wanat, and it went nowhere. No chart success, no buzz, no real industry support, just nostalgia. At this point, Next was a legacy act. They weren't making a true comeback. They were just another 90s R&B group doing occasional performances for old fans. But here's the thing. The same problems that tore them apart the first time never went away. RL was still the star. He was the one most people cared about, and the Brown brothers still resented that. The money wasn't the same. They weren't getting major label backing, so everything was coming out of their own pockets. And deep down, they never really trusted each other. That's why their reunion never led to a real career resurgence. They weren't the Next of the late 90s. They were 3 guys trying to squeeze one last check out of a brand that had already collapsed. And after that, they all quietly went back to their own lives. RL kept doing solo projects. Tweet rebranded himself as Tweet Is Pars and tried to push new music, and Tilo stayed behind the scenes. So after everything, what's the final takeaway from Next's story? Well, it's simple. Next's rise to fame was a perfect storm of talent, luck, and the music industry's machinery. But their downfall? It was inevitable. They had the hits. They had the sound. But what they didn't have was unity. And without that, no amount of success could keep them together. RL was always the star, and the Brown brothers were never truly on the same page. They had a bond, sure, but the music business isn't built on brotherhood, it's built on power, money, and control. And RL wasn't going to share that spotlight. And let's not forget the financial chaos, personal betrayals, and public scandals that made Next's name synonymous with dysfunction. They tried to force a reunion, but even that was more about nostalgia than actual relevance. The truth is, Next was always destined to fall apart. So, the next time you hear Too Close playing, remember, Next wasn't just a group that broke up. They were a group that was never really together in the first place. Their story is a lesson about fame, money, and why true brotherhood doesn't always survive in the music business. What could they have been? We'll never know. But one thing's for sure, they were never what they seemed. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment for more insider stories. See you tomorrow.